A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and now, here in TV shows that deserve the spotlight, I figured, why don't we take a bit of a turn away from that, because I got a feeling a lot of bonus episodes are going to come through. With all the new movies I've seen in the past 3 or 4 months, it might be about time that I do get to talk about at least a few of them before such a time comes by. Well, I suppose that before I get back to talking about movies, I got more shows. With this bonus episode though, we're going to basically fill in the time for talking about newer films. And so the film in particular that I've picked out is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. In the same way that Fast X is pretty much being turned into its own trilogy, it seems that we have ourselves a multi-parter in terms of a popular film franchise that has also been around for more than 20 years. In this case, it's Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible film series that's been going on since the mid-90s. And the whole thing about it is that after coming this far, it's quite a thing to talk about. For Dead Reckoning though, this is pretty much where the series truly puts up a huge retribution. Especially since the last film in the series was Fallout. But that was 6 years ago. Rest assured though, this film technically was slated for release a little bit sooner, but we know what has happened by this point. Don't we? Nonetheless though, now that it's finally out and about, I can surely tell you that after watching it from my own perspective, I can at least state that it's what it is, a Mission Impossible film. Ethan Hunt, his superiors, whom are unfortunately not happy with him at the moment, but yet they do need him back. I can only speculate that what has happened within many of the movies, I'll be honest, I have not necessarily seen all of them, but I have seen parts 1, 2, and 5, pretty much. This is the first time in a while that I've actually gotten back into Mission Impossible, and I do got the feeling that maybe some of the others I'd have to give a watch, at least to catch up on what's happened overall. But Ethan Hunt's basically in hiding. A mission is then sent out to him. A courier goes to his location. Basically, like DoorDash in a way. Can't really pinpoint if that's what it is though. But a message comes to Ethan in the form of a self-destructing note. A paper that tells him that they need him back. And they have some new intel on a supposed device. A device that is unlike any form of coding and digital infrastructure ever created. This device is astonishingly powerful. And if it's given to the wrong hands, then it's likely it'll not only become a self-aware entity of its own type, but this digital virus-like thing that is just trapped inside somewhere, it could basically corrupt so many different things. Infrastructures of all types will likely be doomed if this thing were to be released. So this is basically what they did here. They gave us something big to tackle. A worldwide phenomenon that is unlike many other bits of the Mission Impossible franchise. It pretty much just started as a superior becoming a mole and leaking secret identities from stolen data files and forcing Ethan Hunt to basically fight for his own life and reputation, and also clearing his name from a suspected framery. And so that's pretty much where it started back in '96. But going all the way to 27 years in the future, this is what we get. We get Ethan Hunt with probably one of his biggest challenges yet. Preventing some kind of virus. I would probably suspect it's what it is. But they basically have a whole new definition for it. Though virus is the technicality of what this thing truly is. But anyways though, after a little run in the desert with some thugs, Ethan was able to obtain more intel. but not before supposedly losing a partner of his, one that has fought alongside him for a while. More time passes, and eventually Ethan meets up with more friends of his. Friends known as Luther and Ben. These two were actually featured in the earlier films, but over time have since become good partners with Ethan and friends. So they basically head into an airport next thing, trying to find an exact person. A person whom is unfortunately pretty much concealing a supposed part of a key. The thing is, though, is that this key is the key, literally, to unlocking the true power of this infrastructural virus. This entity, of course, cannot truly be activated unless both halves of the key are collected. And so, knowing that supposedly someone was able to get Ethan half of the key means that they got to find the other half. And how they do that is by looking into various files. And when they find out that this airport has a person whom is about to board a flight that actually does possess the other half of the key, they basically go after him. But it turns into a pretty wicked cat and mouse game. And it gets freaky really quickly. You feel like you're on the edge of your seat and whatnot. And the thing is, you got Luther telling everybody what to do. You got Ben going down into the cargo bay, stealing all kinds of luggage, trying to find the other half, before eventually coming across a little machine. A machine that unfortunately turns into a nuclear bomb. Powerful enough to destroy the entire airport and take everything with it. He has to decipher the whole thing, while Ethan's out there still looking for the other half of the key, and Luther's still trying to figure out who it is that's carrying it. With all these different things mishmashed together, it becomes a huge piece of tension that you'd never think would happen. But then, of course, the biggest shocker that comes to be. It turns out a woman is the true holder of the other half of the key. And when Ethan catches up to her, he would form an agreement with her. A little trade-off, pretty much. One of his own items that she would now possess as a supposed gift from him in exchange for the other half of the key. Supposedly it's done. And the thing is, it's basically a little swap trick, as she was able to steal that half of the key and be able to get away with it. And man, the fact that she was able to get on board a flight while Ethan struggled to catch up to her, all the while Luther and Ben were aimlessly trying to figure out what the heck to do, this itself is quite a scene. But it only gets better from here. Because an unnamed individual supposedly is the mastermind of a plan that's formulated when this entity is in his own possession. As soon as he claims both halves of the key, he basically will use the key to unlock its true power and eventually use its power to take over the world and rule over whatever he pleases. He's not necessarily given a name, although canonically they refer to him as Gabriel. So Gabriel is the true man behind the operation. And with Ethan, his partners, as well as new people that he comes along and basically runs into, scene after scene after scene, it gets crazy. Oh, but then of course the gadgets are there. You have the mask maker, which allows anybody to disguise as any person. It's used a few times in this movie. But then of course, there also comes a safety car. Oh man. Who would have thought an old Fiat 500 could be considered a safety car? Well, truth be told, what it really is, it's a heavily modded Fiat 500. And it's insane. This Fiat is literally bulletproof. But it can also withstand a military truck like no other, which someone does actually get a hold of and chases after Ethan. So, it's an unbelievable car chase. You got giant cat and tiny little mouse, essentially. It kind of reminds me of Duel 1971. which I have talked about before, so do be sure to check out that video on films I should have talked about years ago. But scene after scene after scene, it just never stops, with the likes of action, a little bit of drama, and a little bit of some horrifying and saddening bits. Like at one point, where the entity actually is, in fact, able to take control of the comm system that Ethan, Luther, and company were able to use for a while. They shorted out, and now they have to rely on older tricks, just to ensure that they can safely band together to stop this whole thing from going down. All the while, Gabriel was able to get the upper hand and stab someone to death. A moment of peace and silence erupts. And this newer woman, whom Ethan found in the airport, now agrees to become a new member of the team. The team known as the Impossible Missions Force, or IMF. And when she does so, one part of the new plan that's set in motion is that Gabriel plans on taking control of a train in England. This train, unfortunately, is on a doomed course. That, of course, involves a broken bridge that's not even quite finished. But the whole thing about it is that when this scene basically comes to an end, the defeat of Gabriel comes in the form of him being tricked into handing over the key. Ethan was able to get away with the key successfully in a safe place, while Gabriel is stuck on a truck with basically the same swap out technique that this woman basically had the skill set to perform. So if you ask me, that's really quite a way to turn around, go from being evil to being good. A perfect candidate for the Impossible Missions Force, if you ask me. And then, well, the train does end up rolling down off of the bridge, but not before a few coaches follow suit. And oh boy, if you think that the two that are still inside the coach would be able to get out easily, no. This ain't nothing like what happens in Uncharted 2 or various other scenes in other media that involve people climbing out of coaches to safety. Because another coach follows right after the first one tumbles down into the ravine below. And then that one falls, then the next one falls, and then another one falls, until finally they were able to get onto another coach. One that is very precariously hanging over the edge. Man, it makes you wonder how many coaches are going to tumble down there. Thankfully, it stops right then and there. Now that, of course, is a pretty impressive way to climax a scene. They're at the point of danger where they could possibly die in a coach that's going to fall into the river, but they somehow get out of it alive with barely any scratches. That's quite a way to go. But then, of course, the whole thing comes down to where everybody is reunited, Gabriel's thwarted, and the whole plan of securing the key and ensuring that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands continues from that point on. So that's pretty much what it is. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 truly is the beginning of something rather epic. But the only true way to find out how big the story is going to be is if we get to see Part 2. Now, I'm beyond stoked of what they could possibly offer for this second film in a Dead Reckoning series, especially after all the other materials that they've made for us back then. But I guess for now, what we're going to have to do is just wait and see what happens. And then and only then, we can then expect to find out more on what Mission Impossible will take us. What kind of impossible mission will follow suit after what we just witnessed in theaters. And probably on digital as well. We'll have to find out more when part 2 of Dead Reckoning comes through after some time passes. In terms of rating this film, it's a pretty subliminal 8.9 out of 10.1. All because of the fact that it had some unbelievable mechanics. And I feel like it not only invented a whole new series of plots, cliches, and maybe a whole lot more than what I could have expected from it, but it's just the same old stuff with Tom Cruise and a lot of other people following his lead. And I suppose with that in mind, that pretty much covers this film of all the 2023 releases we got so far. I'll surely come back with some more of this stuff here in August 2023, and we'll pretty much see where it goes from there.